Maya Johnson sat in the crowded press room, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like a drum. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the sea of faces around her. Mostly male, mostly dismissive. She adjusted her notes for the umpteenth time, smoothing the edges of her notepad, her fingers trembling slightly. Maya had earned her place here. She was a talented journalist with years of experience. Yet, as she glanced around, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. "Look at her," whispered one of the journalists seated 2 rows ahead, leaning into his companion. "What do you think she'll ask? Probably something about fashion." His words, laced with derision, hung in the air, and Maya's stomach churned. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the podium where the city's mayor was about to address the press. But the laughter of her colleagues pierced her resolve, and she felt a familiar knot of frustration tighten within her. "Just breathe, Maya," she whispered to herself, forcing a smile. She had a question ready, one that cut to the heart of the ongoing corruption scandal plaguing the local government. But doubts lingered in the back of her mind, whispering that her voice might be drowned out in the cacophony of louder, more authoritative voices. As the mayor approached the microphone, the room fell silent. Maya took a deep breath, ready to raise her hand when the opportunity arose. The mayor began discussing the city's new initiatives, his voice booming with confidence and authority. Maya's heart raced as she listened, mentally preparing her question. When the moderator finally opened the floor for questions, Maya's hand shot up. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. The moderator, however, glanced over her head, nodding toward a burly white male journalist seated to her left. "Yes, Jim," the moderator said, gesturing for him to speak. Maya's heart sank. She lowered her hand slowly, forcing herself to maintain composure as Jim asked a question that felt trivial compared to the critical issues at hand. The dismissive chuckles from the surrounding journalists echoed in her ears. It was a familiar scenario, her presence overlooked, her voice silenced. "Unbelievable," she muttered under her breath, her eyes narrowing slightly. The frustration bubbled within her, but she refused to let it consume her. Instead, she made a decision, a determination ignited within her. She would not let this be the end of her inquiry. She would pursue the truth on her own terms. As the press conference wound down, Maya gathered her belongings, her mind racing with possibilities. She stepped outside the press room, the fresh air hitting her face like a splash of cold water. With each step, her resolve solidified. She could not sit back and allow the corruption to fester in the shadows, not when she had the skills to expose it. "Hey, Maya," called out a fellow journalist, Sarah, who had always shown her kindness amidst the dismissive attitudes. "Are you okay?" Maya turned to face her, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just the usual," she replied, shrugging off the disappointment. "But I think I'm going to dig into that corruption story myself." Sarah's brows furrowed in concern. "You mean the one about the city officials? Be careful. It's dangerous territory." "I know," Maya said, her voice firm. "But if no one else will speak up, I will. I can't just let this go." "Just promise me you'll be safe," Sarah replied, her gaze earnest. "You're talented, Maya. You deserve to be heard." With a nod of gratitude, Maya turned away, her mind already racing with plans. She would need to speak to whistleblowers, gather evidence, and piece together the story that was waiting to be told. It would be a challenge, no doubt, but she felt a fire igniting within her. This was her moment to shine, to break through the barriers that had held her back for far too long. As she walked down the street, the city buzzing with life around her, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was determined to carve out her own path, to challenge the narratives that had long silenced her. In that moment, she realized that her voice mattered, and she was ready to make it heard, loud and clear. Maya sat at her small kitchen table, a stack of notes and interview transcripts spread out before her like the pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed softly, illuminating her determined expression. She had spent the past several days chasing leads, interviewing whistleblowers who were willing to risk their jobs to speak out against the corruption that ran deep within the local government. Each conversation revealed another layer of deceit, another player in the scandal that had been festering for far too long. In her latest interview, Maya had spoken with Jordan, a former aide to one of the implicated officials. His hands trembled slightly as he recounted the shady deals he had witnessed, the conversations held in hushed tones behind closed doors. "I couldn't believe it," he had said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They were all in on it, trading favors for contracts lying to the public. It made me sick." Maya leaned forward, her pen poised above her notebook. "And you have proof of these transactions?" she pressed, her heart racing with the possibility of tangible evidence. Jordan nodded. "I kept records. I knew something was off, so I documented everything. It's in my old office, but I'm too scared to go back there." As she recalled their conversation, Maya felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. She had stumbled upon a web of corruption that could shake the foundations of power in her city. Yet, with this knowledge came a heavy burden, the responsibility to expose the truth while navigating the risks involved. The following day, she returned to the newsroom with a newfound sense of purpose, eager to share her findings with her editor, Tom. But as she approached his office, her heart sank at the thought of his likely skepticism. Tom was a seasoned journalist, but had a propensity for playing it safe. "Maya," he greeted her, glancing up from his computer screen. "What do you have for me?" "Tom, I've uncovered some serious corruption involving city officials," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I have interviews with whistleblowers and potential evidence that could lead to a major expose." Tom raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on his face. "That sounds ambitious. What kind of evidence are we talking about? You know how sensitive these topics can be." Maya took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I have the testimony of several individuals who are willing to go on record, and I believe we can corroborate their claims with documents from their offices." "Look, I get it," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But we need to think about the implications here. You're a talented journalist, Maya, but this sounds risky. Why not focus on a safer story? The city council's upcoming budget meeting could be a good angle." Maya felt her frustration rising. "Tom, this isn't just a story about numbers. This is about corruption that impacts our community. If we don't report on this, who will?" He shook his head, dismissing her passion. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you need to be realistic. We can't burn bridges with powerful people. Let's not jeopardize your career over a hunch." Biting her lip to suppress her anger, Maya nodded, knowing that she needed to tread carefully. But deep down, she felt the fire igniting within her. She refused to let her truth be silenced. Later that evening, she found herself scrolling through her contacts, searching for independent magazines that might share her vision. After several minutes of research, she stumbled upon a publication dedicated to investigative journalism, exactly what she was looking for. Her heart raced as she composed an email outlining her findings, attaching snippets of interviews and a brief summary of the corruption she had uncovered. Within hours, her phone buzzed with an email notification. As she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. The magazine expressed interest in her story and requested a meeting to discuss it further. Maya couldn't suppress the smile that spread across her face. This was her chance, a glimmer of hope amidst the shadows of doubt she had faced. Ignoring the warnings from Tom, she felt invigorated by the possibility of finally making a difference. As she prepared for her meeting, she knew that this was just the beginning of a fight that would test her resolve and determination. The barriers she faced were daunting, but Maya was ready to break through them, one story at a time. Maya sat at her cluttered desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating the determination etched on her face. The weight of her investigation pressed heavily on her shoulders, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. The anonymous messages had begun flooding her inbox last week, lurking ominously like shadows in the corners of her mind. "Back off," they warned. "You don't know what you're getting into." But she did know. She was chasing the truth, and that pursuit was worth every threat. "Do you really think they'll back off?" Sarah, the young intern who had taken to following Maya's journey, asked with wide eyes as she leaned against the desk. Her admiration for Maya was palpable, but the fear of the unknown was evident in her voice. Maya turned to face her, a determined glint in her eyes. "If they think I'll cower in fear, they don't know me at all. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's been silenced. Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthening. I'm with you. Whatever it takes. Maya smiled, grateful for the support. She had formed an unlikely bond with Sarah over the past few weeks. The intern's enthusiasm reminded Maya of her own early days in journalism, before the prejudices of the industry had begun to creep into her confidence. As evening descended, Maya decided to take a break. She stood by the window, gazing out at the cityscape lit by a golden sunset. The streets below bustled with life, unaware of the turmoil brewing within the walls of their local media. The thought ignited a fire in her belly. She was not just another journalist. She was a catalyst for change. Returning to her desk, Maya opened her email to review her notes. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently against the wooden surface, breaking her concentration. It was a new message, and her heart raced as she read the words, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." "Who is it?" Sarah leaned over, concern etched on her face. Maya hesitated, biting her lip. "Just another threat. They're trying to intimidate me." Sarah's brow furrowed. "That's not okay. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." "It's part of the job," Maya replied, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "But it's not just a job for me. This is personal." The atmosphere in the room shifted as they exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They were in this together. Days passed, filled with late nights and endless research. Maya's determination led her to a group of fellow journalists who shared her vision. They met at a small cafe tucked away from the bustling streets, each one a beacon of resilience against the oppressive weight of the industry. "Thank you for coming," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We have to support each other. There's strength in numbers." Tom, a seasoned journalist with a reputation for exposing corruption, nodded. "You're on the right path, Maya. But be careful. These people don't play fair." "I know," she replied, her jaw tightening. "But we can't let fear silence us. Look at what's happening around us. We have a responsibility to report the truth." The group erupted in murmurs of agreement. Sarah sat beside Maya, watching the camaraderie unfold, her heart swelling with pride. As the meeting concluded, Maya felt invigorated. They brainstormed strategies, shared resources, and vowed to amplify each other's voices. It was refreshing to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who understood the stakes at play. The day arrived when her article was set to be published. Maya paced her apartment, anxiety coiling in her stomach. What would the fallout be? Would she be targeted again? But deep down, she knew she had to see this through. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, stepping into the room, her eyes shining with excitement. Maya paused, taking a deep breath. "Ready as I'll ever be. Once this goes live, there's no turning back. Whatever happens, you've got me behind you," Sarah said, her voice firm. Maya smiled, feeling the warmth of solidarity. "Thank you, Sarah. That means everything." As the clock ticked closer to publication time, Maya's heart raced. She had fought against every barrier thrown her way, and now she was ready to break down the walls that had long kept her from being heard. Maya Johnson sat at her cluttered desk, the glow of her computer screen illuminating her determined expression. The article she had worked tirelessly on for weeks was finally live, and the response was overwhelming. Notifications pinged incessantly as social media exploded with comments, shares, and retweets. She scrolled through the feed, her heart racing as she read the passionate reactions from readers. "Finally, someone is speaking up," one user proclaimed. Another added, "Maya Johnson is a hero." As she absorbed the wave of support, a sense of vindication washed over her. This was not just her victory. It was a triumph for everyone who had been silenced, for those who had felt their voices drowned out by the powerful. She leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a moment of pride. Yet, that pride was jolted by the sound of her office door swinging open. Tom, her skeptical editor, stormed in, his face a mask of anger. "Maya, what have you done?" he barked, his voice low but filled with tension. Maya straightened in her seat, her pulse quickening. "I did my job, Tom. I reported the truth," she replied, her voice steady despite the brewing storm. The truth. Tom laughed bitterly, pacing the small space. You think this is about truth? You've jeopardized the entire newspaper's reputation. Do you have any idea how powerful these people are? Maya's resolve hardened. And do you have any idea how many lives are affected by their corruption? Ignoring it won't make it go away. We have a responsibility to report the facts. Tom's eyes narrowed, the lines on his forehead deepening. You put us all in danger. You've made enemies, and now they're coming for us. Do you really want to risk your job, your career for this? Maya stood, her heart racing, but her head held high. If exposing corruption means risking it all, then so be it. I'd rather fight for justice than stay silent. Tom's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. You're being naive. This isn't just about you. You're a part of a bigger machine, Maya. Think of the consequences. Consequences? She echoed, her voice rising. The consequences of not acting are far worse. People are suffering, Tom. I won't back down. As the tension in the room thickened, Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. She had come too far to let fear dictate her actions. You can threaten my job, but you can't silence the truth. People are waking up, and they want accountability. Tom took a step back, his face a mix of exasperation and uncertainty. You don't understand what you're doing. These officials won't take this lightly. Maya felt a flicker of doubt, but she pushed it aside. I have the support of the community, Tom. They're rallying behind the story, and I won't let them down. His eyes softened momentarily, but the hardness returned. You're playing a dangerous game, Maya. I hope you know what you're risking. The door swung shut behind him, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. She took a deep breath, her heart still pounding. The weight of her editor's words lingered, but she couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that coursed through her veins. She picked up her phone, scrolling through the supportive messages. Just remember, you're not alone, Sarah, the young intern had texted. We're with you. Maya smiled at the message, her resolve strengthening. She had allies who understood the importance of her work. The path ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but she was ready. In the days that followed, the backlash intensified. Powerful figures began to retaliate against the article, launching smear campaigns and attempting to discredit her work. Maya received anonymous threats warning her to back off, but each message only fueled her determination. One afternoon, as she was reviewing new leads in a bustling cafe, she overheard two men at a nearby table discussing her article. Did you read what Maya Johnson wrote? One of them scoffed. She thinks she can take down the big shots just like that. What a joke. Maya's heart raced, but instead of feeling discouraged, she felt a fire ignite within her. She leaned in closer, catching snippets of their conversation. Someone needs to teach her a lesson, one of them said. Determined not to be intimidated, Maya sent a quick text to Sarah and her other allies, rallying them for a meeting. They needed to strategize, to come together and support one another against the growing threats. As she left the cafe, the weight of the world felt heavy on her shoulders, but she also felt the strength of solidarity. Maya was no longer just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone whose voices had been stifled in the shadows. She would continue to break barriers, no matter the cost. Maya sat in her modest apartment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her cluttered desk. The evidence she had gathered lay scattered around her, each piece a thread in the intricate tapestry of corruption she was unraveling. The weight of her discovery was heavy on her shoulders. Tom, her editor, was not just a skeptic. He was complicit in the very scandal she was determined to expose. As she stared at the documents, her mind raced, grappling with the betrayal of someone she had considered a mentor. Why would he do this? She murmured to herself, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts, hesitating before hitting Sarah's name. I need to talk to someone, she thought, feeling the need for reassurance. Hey Maya, what's up? Sarah answered, her voice bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to Maya's dark thoughts. Can you come over? I found something. Something big, Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Sure, I'll be there in 20, Sarah said, sensing the urgency in Maya's tone. As she waited, Maya paced the room, replaying her interactions with Tom in her mind. His dismissals of her work now felt like a carefully crafted facade. She recalled his smirk when she suggested a deeper investigation. "It's too risky," he had said, waving her off. "Stick to the light stuff, Maya. You don't want to make enemies." Enemies. The word echoed in her mind. She was determined to make one more Tom. When Sarah arrived, she found Maya seated at her desk, the evidence laid out before her like a crime scene. "What's going on?" she asked, concern etching her features as she approached. "Maya, this is incredible," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes widening as she sifted through the documents. "But why didn't you bring this to Tom?" "Because he's involved, Sarah. He's part of the cover-up." Maya's voice cracked, the emotional toll of her discovery weighing heavily on her. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing in disbelief. "I found emails linking him to the officials. He's been suppressing stories, protecting them," Maya explained, her voice gaining strength. "I can't just sit back and let this happen. I need to expose him." "Are you sure? He's powerful, Maya. This could blow back on you," Sarah cautioned, her tone serious. "I know, but I can't let fear control me anymore. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's been silenced. I have to do this," Maya declared, her resolve hardening. As the afternoon turned into evening, they brainstormed ideas on how to confront Tom. "We have to catch him off guard," Sarah suggested. "What if we set up a meeting under the guise of discussing your article?" "That could work. I'll ask him to meet tomorrow," Maya replied, her heart racing at the thought of facing Tom. The next day, Maya sat in a small conference room, her palms sweaty as she awaited Tom's arrival. She had rehearsed what she would say 100 times, but the reality of the confrontation was daunting. When Tom entered, he looked as nonchalant as ever, his suit crisp and his tie perfectly knotted. "Maya, good to see you. I hope you've been thinking about that lighter piece," Tom remarked, taking a seat opposite her. Maya swallowed hard, steeling herself for the confrontation. "Actually, Tom, I've been looking into something much bigger," she began, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "Oh, do tell," he replied, a hint of skepticism in his tone. "I've uncovered evidence of corruption involving the officials you've been protecting. And I found your name in the emails," she stated, watching his expression shift from curiosity to discomfort. Tom leaned back, crossing his arms defensively. "You must be mistaken, Maya. I would never—" "Don't lie to me, Tom," Maya interrupted, her anger bubbling to the surface. "You've been feeding them stories to keep the truth hidden. I have everything I need to go public." His eyes darkened, and for a moment, Maya could see the man behind the mask of the supportive editor she thought she knew. "You don't want to go down this road, Maya. You'll regret it," he warned, his voice low and threatening. "I'd rather risk everything than let you continue this charade," Maya shot back, her heart racing with the power of her words. As the tension thickened in the room, Maya realized she might be facing a wall of influence and deceit that could silence her efforts. But she was ready to fight, prepared to break the barriers that had held her back for too long. Maya stood at the podium, her heart pounding as she faced the sea of reporters, cameras flashing like fireflies in the dim light of the conference room. The air was thick with tension. She could feel the weight of their gazes, a mixture of skepticism and anticipation. She cleared her throat, channeling the fire that had fueled her journey thus far. "Thank you all for being here today. I stand before you not just as a journalist, but as a person who believes in truth and accountability." As she spoke, her voice resonated with conviction, cutting through the murmurs that had filled the room. "Over the past few months, I have uncovered evidence of corruption involving several high-ranking officials and my former editor, Tom Harris. This is not just a story. This is a call to action." Maya's words hung in the air, and a hushed silence fell over the crowd. She continued, detailing her findings and the web of deceit that had ensnared them all. "I have documents, witness testimonies, and a timeline of events that clearly indicate the extent of this corruption. It is time for the truth to come out and for those responsible to be held accountable." Suddenly, she noticed Tom in the back of the room, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. His presence, a reminder of the battle she had fought, only fueled her resolve. Tom Harris not only ignored the truth, but actively participated in the cover-up. His actions have undermined the integrity of our profession. A low murmur rose from the crowd, and Maya could see the reporters exchanging glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Just as she feared her words might be falling on deaf ears, a figure pushed through the throng of journalists, a woman with a determined stride. She was a former assistant to one of the implicated officials, and her presence sparked a wave of curiosity. "I have something to say," the woman announced, her voice steady. The room fell silent once more, all eyes now on her. Maya felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this was the turning point she had been waiting for. "I worked closely with the officials Maya mentioned," the assistant began, her voice stronger than Maya had anticipated. "What she says is true. I witnessed firsthand how they manipulated contracts and orchestrated deals that lined their own pockets while ignoring the needs of the community." Gasps erupted in the audience, and Maya's heart raced as the woman continued, exposing the depths of the corruption. "I was scared to speak out before, but I can't stay silent any longer. I have documents that can corroborate everything Maya has said." Maya's breath hitched in her throat as the weight of the moment sank in. This was the validation she had sought, the proof that the truth could not be buried. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for your bravery." As the former assistant presented her evidence, the atmosphere shifted. Reporters began to scribble notes frantically, excitement buzzing in the air as the truth unraveled before them. Maya felt a swell of pride and relief. She was not alone in this fight. Hours later, as the press conference concluded, the news broke like wildfire. Tom was forced to resign amid the scandal, and investigations were launched against the implicated officials. Maya watched the chaos unfold on the television screens, a mixture of disbelief and triumph washing over her. She had done it. She had not only stood her ground, but had also rallied others to join her cause. Weeks later, she received a call that would change her life forever. "Maya Johnson, this is the National Press Association calling to inform you that you have been awarded the Courage in Journalism Award for your outstanding work in exposing the corruption in your community." Tears streamed down her face as she absorbed the news. This recognition was not just for her, but for everyone who had ever felt silenced. She knew that her journey was far from over. There were still barriers to break, still stories to tell. Standing on stage to accept her award, Maya looked out at the audience, filled with fellow journalists and supporters. This award is not just a personal achievement. It is a reminder that every voice matters. We must continue to fight for the truth, no matter the odds. Together, we can break barriers and create a better world for all. As the applause echoed around her, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a journalist. She was a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. With her voice finally heard, she stood tall, ready to continue breaking barriers in the world of journalism.